Okay, welcome to the completely unscripted. We're going to photogrammetry create ground. That just proved it was unscripted right there. All right, I got grass. I got mulch. Let's just make some grass. Drag these 40 something pictures into Photoshop. It's not that many. Ground is probably about the easiest thing to photogrammetry. You don't actually need a ton of pictures really. You just need nice crispy pictures. This was taken on a cloudy day, which is preferable. Zoom in here. Oh, beautiful grass. Okay, now it was cloudy, so I believe if I go into the white balance and let's go into the basic here, we can go cloudy. I think the as shot white balance is actually a lot better. And we'll leave it like that. That looks a lot closer to what it actually looked like. And we got all of these. Okay, look, my foot's in there. Okay, so what do we want to do here? Let's drop the highlights. I'm just going to dial in 50. 450, yes, let's dial in 450. I didn't even know it would go that low. And we'll raise the shadows about 50. And then we can drop the whites, maybe like 25. 26 will do. Okay. All right, so I think that's pretty good. Let's go ahead and go to our details. No, sorry, optics. I do not want this on. Turn that off. Chromatic aberration is fine to get rid of, but you don't want it to correct your profile. That's weird. I wish that was not on by default. I don't like that. We'll go to the details. It's got the sharpening. That's fine for this. And let's go back over to here. Let's just bump the texture just a tiny bit, not too much. I don't like to go crazy with this. Just bump all of these a little tiny bit. That'll just, it's like micro contrast. A little bit of contrast in there. Yeah, that'll look good. Everything looks nice and sharp. Okay, that looks pretty good. We just copy edit settings, Control A, select everything, paste edit settings. Boom, 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 boom. Done. All right, so we can export. And JPEG's fine. And I'll go ahead and that's 12. Let's just pick a different spot. So photogrammetry, and I like to put it in a folder called grounds, and I'll call this grass. Oh, I don't know. We'll say 01 because I don't think I have a grass in here. Believe it or not. Strange thing is I actually live literally next to a sod farm. I could have tons of grass, but I digress. Okay, so we just gotta wait for these to pump out, and we'll go ahead and get our window open, ready to take these into our photogrammetry software, Metashape. So let's get all these. All right, we're in Metashape now. Control A, let's grab all these pictures. Let's drag it into the chunk. Workflow, align. I'm gonna have it highest. I know they're sharp. They should be really good. I'm gonna put this up a little bit higher and say okay, and let's just let this go. Okay, it only took a few minutes and we're set up here, ready to go. These are all the cameras. And we just need to get it like a square section. So I take a little bit extra just in case I need more, but just a square section is fine. What I want to do is rotate this so it's looking top down. So I'm going to go ahead and go to rotate object, And then I'm going to hit 5 on my keyboard, and then I'm going to hit 1. So that's the top view. Something like that. I'm going to go to the move. Move it in the center, like so. And then I want to go to one of my side views, so I'll hit 3. You can see it's not perfectly aligned yet. But that's pretty nice and flat. And then what I can do is go back to my top view, and I can basically change my domain. So move region, resize region. We'll do resize region. And actually, let's rotate it first. Let's go ahead and just rotate it. You know what? Actually, I like this section right here, so maybe I won't rotate the region. Maybe I'll rotate this. I meant that. And we'll just move this over a little bit. Maybe something like that. So this will be the section that we'll grab. And then resize region. We'll rotate first. Then resize. Okay, put it there. Something like that. And I'm just eyeballing it. Hopefully it's nice and square. And if it's getting kind of sketchy on the edges, I don't want that area. So something like that will probably be good. Okay, so let's double check this from the side view. Make sure that, yeah, so we want to get this area kind of clamped down a little bit there and there, like so. And that looks good. Okay, so now we'll build our mesh. I'm going to do it at ultra high, at 0, so the custom is set, and then I put 0 in there, and it'll give me as high as I can get. So let's do this. Okay, it was about 20 minutes or so to process, and let's get it out of orthographic. Let's see what we got here. Look at that. I think I have it upside down. Oh, silly me. There we go. That's the grass. Okay. Wow, look at that. Actually looks pretty impressive. I think that'll bake nicely. Yep, that's pretty cool. 46 million polys. Wow. Pretty interesting. Okay, so what's next? Let's decimate this. We'll decimate a copy, that is. And yeah, it doesn't have to be big. We'll just make it like 5,000. Something like that. Say okay. Nope. And let's get going. Now, while this is working, I want to mention that I have already processed, while this was going, maybe 5 other sets of textures that I got in the same session, and I was only out for about an hour and a half. So the reason why I'm bringing that up is because you want to use your time wisely. You know, you have like processes going, and while they're going, you can do other things, which is what I am suggesting. So now we just need to export this, export the model, and we'll have to make a new folder for it. Let's see here, grounds. Actually, we have the folder. Here it is, grass 01, and grass underscore 5K. And we don't need vertex color, so we're good. Okay, so now we've got that out, we can go ahead and make a plane to project the textures onto. So let's get into Maya just to make that plain. Okay, let's go ahead and import that. Okay, let's import that Decimated Mesh. There we go. Let's make a plane. And let's go ahead and just make this 1 by 1. And we'll make this maybe, look at that, pretty close. So we don't have to worry about making it perfect. We'll just go ahead and scale it so it just fits within there, like so. Maybe a little bit smaller. Pretty good, pretty good. We'll delete that history. Just bring it below there, delete the history, freeze the transformations, and now we can export that, export selection. Call this Bake Mesh. And then we could jump back into Agisoft. Import. We'll go ahead and save the file while we're at it. Okay, so we've got our bake mesh in here, and let's go ahead and start baking. So we're going to go build texture, and we'll start off with the diffuse map, but we're going to do it from our high poly. Say okay. Okay, the baking took place, and you can see we have our nice projected texture right on there. Looks good. Let's go ahead and do the next one. Workflow, build texture, and I'm going to do my displacement next just to make sure that my displacement is working good. This one's been tricky, so want to make sure that's working so I don't have to move this plane somewhere. All right, let's look at this fantastic displacement map. That looks great. We can use that. We might have some issues with it being so high on certain areas and then low in others, but we'll get it to work. Even if we have to kind of flatten it out a little bit, that's okay. So let's go on to the next one. We'll go to workflow, texture, and let's do the normal map. All right, here's that normal map. Looks great. And look at all the detail there. That's going to work out great. So the last thing, which will probably take a while, will be the ambient occlusion. So let's go ahead and knock that out. Okay, look at this killer occlusion map. That looks sweet. All right, let's get these out of here. So we're going to go ahead and export. Wrong thing. Export texture. There we go. And we'll make them PNGs. And I'll name this Grass 01 color. And then for this one, we don't really need the alpha channel. So we'll say okay. Okay, I just want to let you know that I paused the video because it actually took a long time to export because it's 8K. So let's go ahead and I'll do a TIFF for the displacement map. like that. Okay, so for the rest of them, I'm just going to do one more and you understand the process here. The rest of them will all just be PNGs. So we already have this one made. And we can go ahead and underscore AO. Okay, so you want to save your file before you close down Agisoft to get them all saved out, and then we get into good old Substance Designer. So I'll go ahead and say OK here to the metallic roughness. That's fine. Say OK, and we'll have to go find those textures and pull them in. Let's pull this down here. Zoom in a little bit there. Okay, so I've got all my textures. I'll just drag those into Substance, and then I'll just say link resource. Say OK. Okay, it took a hot second to come in because they're so big. Put this into here, hook up the color. We don't need that. We'll hook that up. This is the height. And we're gonna need to make it tile here, so I gotta leave it a little bit out like so. And let's go ahead and just kill those, and we'll throw this AO in there and see what it looks like. Oh yeah. And if the AO is too heavy, you can go ahead and just, you know, lower it with the levels or something like that. Okay, we'll want to make a roughness. That's a good one because the grass is somewhat, you know, it can be shiny. So, and it sort of has like a little bit of a waxy surface to it. So, using this diffuse, I don't know how well that will work. I'm going to copy it and just make a copy here. Okay, so we got this. We're going to want this to be a grayscale, so we need to do a grayscale conversion. Bada bing. Now, here's my thoughts. The grass that is kind of lighter, sort of this yellowish grass, it's going to be dull because it's, you know, it's not kind of that live, waxy. Obviously, the grass should not be that shiny. So we don't want that. So what I want to do is I'm going to come in here and sort of balance this out a little bit, and then maybe use some levels to raise it. I'll use an ambient occlusion inverted to basically cancel out some of the shiny areas that you would get in these dark patches. You know, the stuff that's made from the shadows, the ambient occlusion. Let's do that first. All right, so we'll do that, and then we'll invert. And then we can use a blend. So basically, this will go on top, this will go on the bottom, and then this will go into here, and then in my blend, I'll go ahead and make this something like probably like a screen. Let's see what lighten looks like. That's actually not bad either. Lighten is actually pretty good. So let's look at this. Still a little bit kind of shiny, maybe too waxy looking. So then what I'll probably do is I'll make a high pass. And what a high pass does is it basically will try to balance out based on a radius, like the amount of gray, or I should say the amount of light to dark. So it's like almost like you can get rid of contrast. So you have this radius down here. So if I go ahead and start dropping that, it starts kind of like dropping out some of the contrast. So we can plug that in, see what happens. So you can see now the grass just got, so it's not like super shiny anymore. It's got a little bit, which I'm okay with, but it's not like crazy shiny. And then, you know, you can always, let's look at what this looks like now. Yeah, that's interesting. It's maybe a little bit too much still. So obviously you can always add a levels in here. Plug that in, and then with the levels, we can add white if we want, or we can limit black like this. So we can just go ahead and just sort of have a control to say, yeah, you're not going to get that shiny and waxy on us here. So something like that might be better. Okay, and what else? I'm just curious, actually, because I'm just a fiend for displacement. I just want to see what it looks like. So let's go ahead and do our tessellation displacement. We'll select that, and it'll open up the parameters for it. I'm just curious what happens if we go ahead and change the height scale. Probably have to tessellate it a little bit more. Or maybe this isn't the right mesh. Maybe we should use a high res plane, because that would be more realistic about what we would be doing this for. Come on. It's lagging. So something like that. Yeah, for right now, I think I can live with that. It could always be changed later. That's the beauty of proceduralism. All right, so we have to get some tiling going on here, and let's go ahead and dive into that. Okay, as we take our dive into tiling these textures, I brought in this little swatch that I made in Photoshop just to illustrate what's happening when we do the make it tile. So let's go ahead and make it tile. Make a tile, and we can do a make a tile photo for now, which is fine. Okay, so this is the original. This is the make a tile. We can expand this out and see what it's going to look like. You can see this is the, you know, it's doing this like function where it's shifting things and fading things, and that's all basically controlled here in the masking parameters that you can change. So in other words, I don't want to start off with the warping. I think it's almost self-explanatory, but we'll look at that in a little bit. But let's just look at mask size. So just note we have these faded edges right there, and in the horizontal I'm going to increase the mask size. So you can see at the horizontal mask is moving up and down, right? Okay, so and then the vertical, it's going the other direction. Okay, and then we have the precision. That's how tight, you know, this mask is. Is it kind of faded and has a soft fall off, or is it tight? And we can do it here. You get the same thing, and so you can work with this the way you want as far as, you know, what they have here. But I will say this, I don't think it offers that much control. I have critiques about how well this works. So actually I have that set to grayscale, so we'll just switch that to color. I just noticed there was a red bar there. So we can turn the warping up, and you can see what the warping does is sort of break up the edges. So depending on the kind of texture that you're trying to tile, you know, this may help to tile it better. So I don't know. I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, cool. I'm glad it has this function. And for grass, it actually might work pretty good. It might not be that bad. But I will have to say that I prefer the control that I have in Photoshop over this. And that is something we'll look at you know, in a little bit towards the end of this tutorial. Just how would you do this in Photoshop? Just because realistically, this is subpar to me. Now, with a busy texture like this grass, we might not notice it as much. Let's go ahead and, because even if you look at this, it's almost hard to tell already where the edges are. So in that sense, the make a tile on this might be adequate, but in all cases it will not be. So you might have areas where you need to sort of custom do this, and in that case, that's where I like Photoshop, where I can paint the mask exactly the way I want. Okay, now I haven't touched anything, and yet you can see now, like, that's actually a pretty good tile. Or is it? Let's go ahead and just scroll in a little bit there. We can see there's a repeating pattern right here. And let's go in tighter and see. I want to pay attention to those areas that were faded on the other texture up here, and you can kind of see how they're blending together right here. And you know, we can try warping this a little bit. That made it a little bit better. Maybe changing the precision, you know, making it more precise so it's not so faded, and you're getting less of this like crossover area where they're faded together. So yeah, it's not bad. Okay, it's almost usable, but it is one of those things where you don't really get a refined control. You don't get, I would say, enough control. And when you need more control, you'll have to do, for right now, as far as I know, you'll have to do this like in Photoshop with a brush and a mask. So I'm just pointing that out. Now, that being said, you know, I could go ahead and take the settings I have here, duplicate this into the rest of these and tile it that way. You will have to make, I can just copy this one, right? Control C, Control V, and I can put this one into here, the normal map, and it will work the same. But then I will actually have to make a grayscale version of this for these, which to me is a little bit silly. I mean, I guess let me see this, if it lets me change this from a grayscale. I mean, you can change this to a color. Of course, then it's breaking some of the other things that I did here, like invert grayscale. And then you could use the color one and then change everything back if you wanted to. So I have a grayscale conversion here. So let's just look at how we would do this. I'm going to go ahead and just do an invert. I hit the wrong button. I thought I was in Houdini. You can do an invert color instead. Drive that into there. Drive this into here. It's basically going to work the same. You can delete that out and just put that in there. This is high pass grayscale. Yeah. So you have to do a high pass color in that case. And let me see what I had this thing set at. 2.7. I can just copy that. And then set that. Oh, it's actually already set to the right. Is it? We're getting lag here. I blame the capture software for the lag. All right, let's look at this. Okay, yeah, so it was at 6. There we go. All right, so now we have basically the same results going into a color. Then the colors going into the roughness, and we could just do the conversion at the end. So I can say Control C, Control V, put that in there, and then we can convert to grayscale if we want here. So now we have basically the same thing, and then we don't have to dial in all those numbers. And you can do the same thing down here for these. These are probably, I believe this is grayscale right now. You can change it to color and change it back. And then this one, I'm not sure how the height will react to changing it to grayscale, actually. I mean, changing from grayscale. So let's see, it's still keeping it a 32-bit float, it looks like, so I guess that's okay. As long as you're not losing your extra bit depth, then I think you're okay. So you would do the same thing, and then you would take these textures, and once you have this all done, go ahead and right click on your graph and export as bitmaps. And let's go ahead and I'll go ahead and just finish it, since it's the right thing to do. Actually, we can go ahead and just duplicate this too. Do that. Now, what you can do if you have this conversion going on is that you can pack grayscales into single channels into textures. So like the R, G, and B can be different and be packed into one texture. So that's an advantage of doing it in grayscale versus doing it in color, because you don't need an R, G, and B for just a black and white texture. Okay, that should do it. And let's go ahead and take a look at this. Just make sure it looks all tiled. Looks good. Back this off here. You can't even tell that one. There's the AO, the roughness, normal, and color. Everything looks good. Okay, so it's not bad. It's not bad. I'm going to show you something up here that I made. This is my red ball. Okay, so let me just show you what's going on here. I got it red, swatch. I have just a little mask that I used like a shape for one of these shapes here, these shape nodes. And what I'm doing is I'm combining that, and then I'm layering it on top of my grass right here. Let's see. Sorry, I think this is my grass. I disconnected the grass. Okay, hold on. And I'll explain why I'm showing this in a second. Okay. So if I put this here, so I'm putting the grass underneath basically, and so this is my red ball on grass, right? I'm just using this little mask to only show that one area. So one of the things that you could kind of do a makeshift stamp in here, a clone stamp, and what I'm doing is I'm taking this red ball and then I'm taking a 2D transform and I'm moving it over into the corner, which means that this area right here would then look like it has grass. And if I take that and I put that back on top of this original and then just mask in the area that I want with a shape and a little bit of a blur, so I have the original going in, and then I have this one with the corner. So this is the one in the corner. And then I have the one in the corner is just being blended into the one on, with the red ball in the middle. And so when the two of those come together and they're blended correctly and you put this mask where you want it, you'll get a result that looks like basically like this, and it's basically fading this thing in. And it actually gives you a little bit of like a control, not only that you could get rid of some blatant, object that might be in your scan, which you probably wouldn't want to take pictures if there's some blatant object in there anyway that you didn't want. But you could get rid of it, and you could also, this is a way that you could sort of, like if you did a tile, you can move stuff around and kind of like fix things more hands-on. Okay. I don't like to use they have like a clone stamp tool in here, and like Node, it doesn't really work too well. Even in the documentation, it's like tells you that it's like, this doesn't, they kind of almost say it doesn't work, or it barely works. You know, it's like, I don't know why they even put it in there if it doesn't work. So I just wanted to show that this is how you could kind of do a setup for like a custom clone stamp type of thing. The reason why I want to show you this too, because we're about to jump into Photoshop to see how to do this in Photoshop, and I want to show you how you would do the same thing in Photoshop. I would say you have a lot more control again, and I think I'm not saying Photoshop's better. I think you should use Designer where you can't, you know, like for most things, especially because it's procedural, if you can use Designer. But when you can't, or when Photoshop yields a better result, then use Photoshop. All right, hold on now. All right, here we are in the good old PS. So let's just talk about how we would do this in Photoshop, how we do the tiling. All right, we got our texture. I can drag the texture, make a duplicate, and you want to know the size. So this is 8K. I already know that. So I'm going to go to Other, Offset, and then I'm going to do it 4096 by 4096. And you can see the line in here, right? There's this little crisp line. It's almost hard to read just because, you know, this is, you know, such a broken up image that it's, I mean, because of the detail from the grass, it seems so broken up, it's hard to see. So what you do is you put a mask on here, and then of course I'm going to get my brush out. Now this brush is actually like a stamp that I don't want to call it a stamp. It's a brush that I made from actually doing like ink on paper. So it actually has like some pretty interesting texture. But this is where I got that swatch from that I showed you. Now with this brush here, and I have my tablet pen, I can go ahead and just make it smaller maybe. And then I can start brushing black here from my swatch and start painting out this edge. And the nice thing is I have like complete total control to blend the stuff that's underneath. Okay, now right now this brush is set to 40% flow, and that's not going to work for me. I'm actually going to bring you, let's do this. I'll bring you back to like just a regular old you know, hard brush, and then I'm going to take the hardness down to maybe like 40% or so. So if we just put a layer in here and I just tap once, that's basically what my brush is looking like. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the same function here with just this, and I'm gonna start painting this out. And you can see how I'm moving my hand, and I can actually go ahead and like make it a little bit smaller, like so. And I can find where that edge is, and I can just start painting out the middle. Now when you get towards the edge right at the top, let's see what we have left to do. Make my brush a little bit smaller, and then make sure that I don't like mess with the tiling going on the top. So I'm just going to go right to the tip of it and just get rid of that little line, but I'm not going to mess too much more. Okay, so you can see how this allows you to really get in there tight and control that tiling, whereas you just don't have that kind of control at all in Substance. I mean, you could, like I said, when I showed that thing at the end, you can kind of figure out a way to move stuff around and sort of like mask it and stuff like that. Yes, that would take way more time than this is taking me to just go ahead and, you know, paint this out. Okay, the other beautiful thing about Photoshop is I was showing that other brush for a reason. Let's get that brush back. So I'm going to bring that brush back, and then I'm going to go ahead and let's look at my settings for this brush. So it's already, I have it set to 40 flow, which I don't want, and I'm going to go into my brush settings. Okay, so I can take this brush and I can add stuff like texture or dual brush. I can come into here and choose like another brush to break it up with. I can go into the scattering setting and I can scatter it a little bit. I can change the count a little bit, count jitter, so that'll like randomly change based on whatever settings I have. Like I'm using a pen, so I can use like pen pressure, you know, and even here for the scatter, I could use pen pressure if I want. Shape dynamic, I can say like, well, I want the minimum diameter to be like that. I don't want it to be too small, or maybe you do want it to be really, really small. Angle jitter, so it's rotating this. These are just things that you just don't have control like this in Substance to do all this stuff. So now that I've got that, like so, and I can start going ahead and like painting out. Now this, I don't think this is the best one for this grass, but I just wanted to show how, you know, like you may have rust or something like that that you're trying to tile, and the breakup that a custom brush that you make, or just a brush that you pick, like a dry media brush. Like I can go here to this dry media charcoal, which has a flow of 55, so I'm going to change that, you know, and I can try using that to see like, hey, does this have like edges that break up this grass nicely? And it might not, right? It just depends, but you just get a lot of fine-tuned control. All right, I think the first, you know, my first pass on it was pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and test my texture. I also am going to look at stuff like this where I got this leaf here and it's sort of repeating right here at the edge. I may not want that. That was also happening. Is that the same leaf? Yeah, that was also happening in the other in Substance. So I'm going to go back to my brush. Let's actually get that soft round back out, because that's the one that I like the best for this. And I'm going to go ahead and hit X on my keyboard, which is going to switch my black and my white. If it works, there we go. Hit X. And then I can go ahead and I can paint. Actually, I want to paint white back in. So let me paint white back in here. So if I don't want that there, I can paint that back in. Now, eventually, I might hit the spot where, you know, where that seam was. And to find where that seam was, you can pull a guide out. I probably need to back up. So I'm going to hit Control 0. It'll back me up, or zoom. It zooms out. And right there is where my seam would be. Okay, so now I know that if I want to work around that, make sure I don't paint over that. But then I can make sure that I don't get that tile of this through here once more. And that might be something to take in consideration. Okay, you know, you can come here and just say, well, I don't want that much showing, you know, and now we have something we could work with. I'm going to hold Control here over the mask and just hit Control and click on the mask, and it'll do a selection. It'll show you where you have painted and where you haven't. So if you've missed a spot, for instance, I have not gone all the way to the edges here. I have not gone all the edges here, and you can see I'm missing a spot right here in the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my rulers, Control R. I want to actually hide the guides. I forgot the shortcut for that, so I'm going to just drag that guide off. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit Control D to deselect, get my brush back out, and we need to change it back to black, and then I can start painting this out in the middle, like so. Make it smaller, and you can see you just have a lot more control with this. Okay, and remember we didn't get all the way to the edges, so we'll have to look for that. Again, I need to get my marker. No, you don't want to snap. I'll tell you what, we'll do it this way. Okay. So you do something like that, and then we can zoom or scoot our way over here and do the same thing. It's even hard to see. There it is. Okay, Control D. Make sure that, you know, looks good, like you have a good fade there. And try to pick up your brush once in a while so you don't do that, because sometimes you'll be painting for a while and then all of a sudden you'll be like, oh no, that doesn't look good, and then you undo and then it undoes everything you just did. Okay, so we zoom out. Now we have a tiled texture. I would say, in my opinion, this is going to be better than what we had before in Substance because we have way more control. And I want to copy this mask into my other textures. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go to channels and I'm going to turn this on, hit Control A with the mask selected and hit Control C. So we copy it to our clipboard, and then we're going to go over to our RGB layer here, just duplicate it, filter, offset, it's the same offset as before. It'll have it, it'll just repeat the same one that it did before. Then we just put a mask on here, go back to our channels, and we'll just go Control V, and you can see the mask is pasted in now. So let's hide that, go back to our top layer, and this should be basically matching, or not basically, it will be matching what you did with the other one. And then this could be saved out as a flat texture. So we have the AO, which is repeat the process, duplicate, offset, mask, channel, Control V, voila. And then you have that tile too. Okay, so yeah, I can take all the textures and just run them through this process, and then I have a tileable texture. Now the only thing that I didn't do is the Substance one. I did the roughness in here. Okay, so I didn't do that in Photoshop yet. So let's look at that. So what I did was I inverted the color of the grass, and sorry, I inverted the AO, and I combined that, I blended that with the original grass, and I put the make a tile on it, right? And then I went ahead and just messed with the levels a little bit, and that was about it. Okay, so I can do the same process here in Photoshop. So of course I can, or I can just take that back into Substance. I can finish this off and take it back into Substance and then work from Substance at this point. Either one's fine. But if I go ahead and hit Control A, Control Shift C, Control V, I have a flattened flattened layer of these two combined. And then I can come here into this. I'm going to delete that. Control A, Control Shift C, Control V, same thing. Let's go ahead and take that this layer, hold Shift and drag it into this. When you hold Shift, it'll drag it exactly into the same pixel space so that it doesn't come offset. So if I go like this and hide it, it should look basically the right way. With this, I can just hit Control I to invert it. So then you have your grayscale inversion. And then from here, the grass, the green part, I can hit Control Shift U, which will desaturate it. And then we can take this and we can go ahead and put something like a screen or a linear dodge add, lighter color. We have different options. You can put these all into a group, Control G, group them, call it rough. And then inside here, I'll also put a layer adjustment, levels, and I'll go ahead and I'm going to clip the black out like so, and maybe like make this a little bit lighter. And if I want, since I already did this in Substance and did some troubleshooting there, I can go ahead and like look in Substance and see, does this look similar? But I'm going to say that that's probably pretty good, and we can go on from there. I will show, there's one thing I should show. You already saw how to do some of this stuff, so I don't want to keep repeating it, but the displacement map, I didn't do the high pass yet in Photoshop, so let me just show you that really quick. And so I'm just going to duplicate the layer here, and then I'm going to just go ahead and go to Filter, Other, High Pass. And then of course you can choose how much you want to high pass this. And the reason why I'm doing this is because if I don't do this, it's the height is like very varied. Yes, very varied. And we don't want it, as you can see here, like it's really high over here and it's really low over there, and we just want it to be more balanced. If you felt like you needed more contrast back in your displacement map, which you probably don't, because for this grass you're probably not even going to use this, but just so you have it. But you can go in and go to your levels, and you know, after you've changed it, you can bring more white and black into there to spread it across. And then now it's, you know, it's kind of like a balanced, even look to it. You can hit Control A, Control Shift C, Control V. That's the levels and this combined together. And then of course we can just go ahead and duplicate that. Go to Filter, Other, Offset, hit OK. Let's put that mask on there. Select the mask, and we still have our clipboard. So we'll hit Control V. Oh, did I do something? Oh yeah, I copied something, didn't I? So we don't have the clipboard. So we have to go back to this and bring this back out and just hit Control A, Control C, and then go back to the displacement. And then here we'll hit Control V. And voila. All right, so now that's nice and balanced. Okay, so now you've got all of your textures done, ready to go, and ready to get into whatever format you're gonna put them into. Okay, so let's say we got that red ball like we were showing earlier in Substance, and in Photoshop there's a ton of ways that you could kind of get rid of that. Let me go ahead and just do this. Control A, Control Shift C, Control V. Oh, you don't want to do that, huh? For some reason it doesn't want to copy the vector layer, so I'll just duplicate these and hit Control E to combine them, and that way works too. Okay, so if I wanted to, you know, you have a patch tool, you can go like this, and you can drag over here, and then boom, gets rid of stuff. You have a stamp tool that you can, you know, hold Alt, click on where you want to stamp from, and you can paint that out. And so you've got that. The only problem is that doing it that way isn't repeatable per se in the other documents. So I just want to show a way that you could do this that's repeatable. There's obviously kind of repeating the way that we did in Substance, which is you can go ahead and just like duplicate this. You can move it, you know, and figure out how far you move it, and then like just mask off the area they want it to go over. That's not really the best way either, so we're not going to do that. What I like to do is I like to use a path, right? So I can either use a shape like this, or I can just use the path tool. And when you start making a path, it'll pop up in a layer over here. So I'm just going to go ahead and just sort of go like this. Okay, so I have this thing surrounded. I could go ahead and hit this selection tool. It'll select that path. To keep the path, I want to double click on it. You can name it if you want. But now it's actually going to get saved into the file. It's not just a work path. So now I have this selection here, and I can go ahead and duplicate this layer, this path layer, hit Control D for right now. I'll go ahead and take the path selection tool, and I'll go ahead and move it and say, oh, maybe I want it here or something like that. And so now if I go ahead, and you can actually do the marching and selection tool by just holding Control and clicking on the path. I can select this, and I can copy this area and then paste it into the other selection. So let me show how I do that. First thing I like to do is I'm going to go to select modify feather, because I want to have like a little bit of a soft edge, and so like I can hit 1 or 2. This is a really big texture, so maybe 2 pixels would be good. And then I can hit, while I'm on this layer, I can hit Control C, Okay, so whatever layer you want to copy the area from, you want to be on. And then I come back to this path here, hold control and click on it, and then it selects that, and then you want to feather that too. So the shortcut for feathering is just Shift F6. You hit that, and then you can hit enter. And then from here, I can just paste in, even if I want it on another layer, make a new layer, and I can hit Control V. And so what it does is it takes that area that you first selected and it pastes it to a selection in another area. So now I have this separate layer that I can control and do the same path selection in another document. So it's not, it's not the fastest method, but let's just say that we had one in here as well, that red ball. You could do something like this where you actually take these paths and drag them into this document. So I've got the one, I've got the other one, and now you can just repeat the same thing. So if there was something very specific that you needed to remove in Photoshop, you can do it that way and just go through that process. So I wanted to just show that because this also is a way where you have like a lot more control than maybe you would in some other programs. Okay, so that's it for these tutorials. This kind of method could be used to do all kinds of different grounds. The beauty of doing the Photoshop way is that if you had something like rocks, or you had something like a very specific tree bark or something like that, you can actually paint the mask so it actually follows the rocks, and so that you can get like a perfect tile, so rocks are on top of rocks type of thing, so that they're not like blending together. This texture, the grass, is pretty easy to tile, but something when you get very specific and you have like specific shapes, you may need to actually paint the mask in a certain way so that it tiles perfectly. So that's why I wanted to show this method too, because now you have the hands-on input version. Last but not least, we just want to export these. So I actually like to do a save as copy and just do it as a PNG for the colors. So I can go ahead and just save this as a PNG. I might want to make it like a second version in case I want to keep the first version. So I can like put tiled or something next to it. Something like that. And then the other one that you have to make sure you do right is you make sure that you save this off correctly. Because this is not a Photoshop file yet, we can go ahead and save as, and then change it from a TIFF to a Photoshop file. So you get all the layers that you want. Make sure you keep everything. And then from there, you can go ahead and save it off as a TIFF. You can try changing it to like 16-bit. I've had some issues though, some programs reading the 16-bit. So, you can just save this off as a TIFF now. But if you're going to save it off as a TIFF, you might as well flatten it because you have the Photoshop file. So Control E, you can select everything, just hit Control E, and then say save as. Still saving. It's a big document. Holy cow, that's going slow. Okay. So we gotta wait for the other one to save. That was strange. It changed it into a... I was just saying RGB 8. I thought that meant... Oh, no, it says gray 32 right there. Okay. Oh, I'm looking at the normal. That's the problem. I get it. I saw RGB 8 and I was like, wait, it should be a 32. Save as. Please try again. It's still going. Wow, taking forever. Let's see how big this document is. It hasn't even written the Photoshop file yet. I'm looking at it over here. There we go, almost a gig. Holy smokes, that's insane. I don't even know. I think that has problems. That's weird. I don't know if that's going to be okay. Photoshop might have issues opening that because you got to save it in like a PSB if it's like too big. Anyway, I'm gonna save this one as a TIFF and just make sure I save tiled. So there we go. Now that's saved, and yeah, I could probably just do it as 16-bit. Yes.